You are programmed for obedience. Don't cause a scene. Wait your turn. Respect the chain of command. These rules are supposed to save us. In our 6 stories, they became a death sentence. We dissect the catastrophic moments when social etiquette overrode the biological will to live. This is not bad luck. This is fatal compliance. Watch this and never confuse discipline with death. October 1st, 2015. The Atlantic Ocean is a crushing void of black water, illuminated only by the faint, rhythmic sweep of radar screens inside the bridge of the SS El Faro. This is a massive vessel, a 790-foot cargo ship, a floating city of steel designed to carry cars and shipping containers between Florida and Puerto Rico. To the untrained eye, she is an invincible fortress. But tonight, the immutable laws of physics are preparing to test the limits of human hierarchy. The ship is steaming directly into the throat of Hurricane Joaquin, a Category 4 monster generating winds of 130 miles per hour and waves the size of 5-story buildings. Inside the climate-controlled bridge, the atmosphere is not one of panic, but of a stifling, professional quiet. This is the domain of Captain Michael Davidson, a veteran mariner with a reputation for efficiency. He has plotted a direct course, confident in his vessel's ability to outrun the storm. But he is working with a fatal blind spot. His weather data is outdated. The storm is erratic, angry, and shifting directly into his path. And here lies the true tragedy. The officers on the bridge know it. The second mate, Danielle Randolph, and the third mate, Jeremy Ream, are staring at their advanced weather radars. They see the angry red bloom of the storm's eye wall shifting directly to intercept them. They understand the math of survival better than the captain at this moment. But they are trapped in a psychological cage far stronger than steel, the maritime chain of command. The voyage data recorder captures the agonizing sound of politeness, dismantling the instinct for self-preservation. They do not scream. They do not grab the wheel. They do not demand a hard turn to the south. Instead, they offer gentle, tentative suggestions, wrapped in the soft cotton of professional courtesy. "I think we are going to be in a fix," the third mate says quietly. It is a suggestion, not a warning. "Maybe we could head south," the second mate asks later. It is a polite question, not a demand. The captain dismisses the concerns. "We'll be fine," he assures them. And because he is the captain, the conversation ends. The culture of maritime discipline silences their survival instinct. They return to their stations, watching the waves climb to 40 feet, knowing the course is fatal, yet unable to break the social contract of the bridge. At 7 a.m., the ocean collects the debt of their silence. The El Faro lists heavily to the right. As the ship tilts past a critical angle, the lubricating oil in the main engine shifts away from the suction pipe. The engine trips offline. The hum of power dies. The terrifying sound of silence fills the bridge, replaced only by the groaning of stressed metal and the roar of the hurricane. Without propulsion, the El Faro is a helpless cork in a washing machine. A cargo hatch blows open near the waterline, and the Atlantic Ocean begins to pour into the hull. This creates a free surface effect. The water sloshing inside destabilizes the vessel, dragging it down like a concrete anchor. The captain returns to the bridge, but his authority is now meaningless against the laws of hydrostatics. The time for polite suggestions has passed. The time for physics has begun. The list reaches 45 degrees. The horizon is vertical. "It's down," the captain says, his voice stripped of all confidence. "I'm a goner," a crew member whispers into the dark. There is no chaotic screaming, only the resigned acceptance of a fate they saw coming but were too well-mannered to stop. At 7:39 a.m., the hull structure fails under the immense pressure, buckling with a sound like a cannon shot. The SS El Faro plunges 3 miles down to the ocean floor, taking 33 souls into the abyss. They did not die because they lacked the skill to navigate. They died because the social cost of interrupting the captain felt higher than the risk of sailing into a hurricane. The wreckage now sits in eternal darkness, a silent monument to the moment when protocol murdered survival. February 18, 2003. The morning rush hour in Daegu, South Korea, is a machine of disciplined efficiency. Thousands of commuters navigate the underground veins of the city, moving with the synchronized rhythm of a society built on order and absolute respect for rules. At Junggangno Station, the environment is sterile and cool, but at 9:53 a.m., the chemistry of the station undergoes a catastrophic shift. On train 1079, a disturbed individual ignites a plastic container filled with gasoline. The interior of the subway car is lined with polyurethane seating, materials that are durable for transport but chemically unstable under extreme heat. Within seconds, the carriage transforms into a blast furnace, releasing a dense black cloud of smoke heavy with carbon monoxide and hydrogen cyanide. This is a severe industrial accident, but it is not yet a mass casualty event. The transition from accident to a large-scale tragedy begins 4 minutes later with the arrival of train 1080 on the opposite track. The driver of train 1080, unaware of the severity of the fire, pulls directly into the smoke-filled station and stops. The doors open briefly, admitting a cloud of acrid toxins, and then the driver shuts them to seal the cabin. This is the moment where protocol becomes a lethal weapon. The intercom crackles to life. A calm, authoritative voice echoes through the sealed steel tube. Please remain in your seats. Wait for further instructions. In a survival scenario, biological instinct screams to run. But here, the cultural conditioning of obedience overrides the survival drive. The passengers sit in the dark. They cover their mouths with handkerchiefs. They cough, but they do not move. They are waiting for permission to save their own lives. The smoke outside is pitch black, but the psychological barrier of the instruction holds them in place more effectively than physical shackles. They believe the system is functioning. They are wrong. The situation escalates from a hazardous environment to a sealed, lethal trap when the station's main power grid fails. The lights die. The train's ventilation systems stop. And then, the final, mechanical betrayal occurs. The driver of train 1080, overwhelmed by the smoke, makes a decision that defies all logic. He flees the train, instinctively removing the master key from the control panel. This is standard procedure for securing a parked train, but in this context, it is a death sentence. When the master key is removed, the pneumatic system for the passenger doors defaults to a locked state. The magnetic seals engage. The passengers are no longer just waiting. They are mechanically entombed. Inside the dark, smoke-filled cars, the oxygen levels plummet. The air is now composed of lethal concentrations of toxic gas. Hydrogen cyanide prevents the body's cells from using oxygen, causing rapid neurological shutdown. The passengers do not burn to death initially. They are chemically asphyxiated. The mobile phone network records the final moments of consciousness, not dramatic goodbyes, but confused reports of the situation. People text that the doors are locked, that they are waiting for the driver. They remain in their seats because they were never told to stand up. The fire eventually consumes the entire train, raising the ambient temperature to over 1,000 degrees Celsius, reducing the interior to white ash and twisted steel. When forensic teams finally breach the hull hours later, they witness a scene that defies the chaotic nature of panic. The bodies are not piled at the doors. They are slumped in their seats or huddled on the floor, preserving the order of the commute until the moment of respiratory failure. The investigation reveals a stark, binary reality. The few passengers who survived were the ones who ignored the intercom immediately. They were the ones who were rude enough to manually crank open the emergency door releases and run. The 192 people who died were the ones who trusted the voice of authority. The Daegu subway disaster is a clinical case study in authority bias. It demonstrates that in a crisis, the social contract of obedience can be just as lethal as the fire itself. The victims did not die because they were trapped by debris. They died because they were trapped by an instruction. June 14, 2017. The London skyline is asleep. On the 23rd floor of Grenfell Tower, a concrete residential block in North Kensington, Gloria Trevisan and Marco Gottardi are awake. They are young, intelligent Italian architects who moved to the UK to build a career. Their apartment, situated at the very top of the building, offers a commanding view of the city. But at 12:54 a.m., the physics of their building are secretly rewritten. 4 floors down, a faulty refrigerator sparks a fire in a kitchen. In a standard concrete building, this fire would be contained within the single apartment, burning itself out against the fire-resistant walls. This is the architectural principle known as compartmentalization, and it is the foundation of the British safety policy known as stay put. The logic dictates that if a fire breaks out, you are safer inside your apartment with the door closed than running through smoke-filled stairwells. Gloria and Marco know this. So, when they smell the first traces of smoke drifting through the vents, they do not panic. They act with the rational calm of educated citizens. They dress. They prepare to leave. But before they open their front door to the stairwell, they do what responsible people do. They call 9999 for guidance. This is the moment where the system betrays them. The emergency operator on the other end of the line is working from a standard script. The operator, unaware that the building's exterior has recently been clad in highly flammable aluminum panels, issues the command, "Stay in your flat. Close the door. Seal the cracks with wet towels. Firefighters are coming." Gloria and Marco are standing at the threshold of life and death. The stairwell is smoky, but passable. If they run now, if they ignore the voice of authority, if they are rude enough to break protocol, they will live. But they are good citizens. They trust the fire department. They retreat into the apartment, close the door, and place wet towels along the floor, believing they are securing their safety. They have just locked themselves in a chimney. Outside, the fire has breached the window of the 4th floor and ignited the exterior cladding. The polyethylene core of the panels acts like solid gasoline. The fire does not burn slowly. It races up the side of the building at a rate of several meters per second, bypassing the internal concrete fire breaks entirely. The stay-put policy assumes the walls will hold the fire. It does not account for the building itself becoming the fuel. Inside the apartment on the 23rd floor, the trap tightens. Gloria and Marco watch in horror as orange flames begin to lick past their window, climbing from below. The heat inside the room begins to rise. The air turns thick with black, oily soot, the byproduct of burning plastic insulation. They call the emergency services again and again. Each time the instruction remains terrifyingly consistent. "Stay put, we are coming to get you." The operator is not malicious. The operator is blind to the reality that the building's exterior is melting. For nearly 3 hours, the couple waits. They watch the glass of their windows crack under the thermal stress. They watch the smoke displace the oxygen in their sanctuary. The towels at the door dry out and begin to smolder. The realization sets in slowly. The authority was wrong. The rescue is not coming. The stairs are now a chimney of flame. By being polite, by listening to the expert, they have forfeited their window of escape. In their final moments, they do not scream at the dispatchers. They do not curse the system. They turn to their families. Gloria calls her mother in Italy. The recording of this call is a devastating document of resignation. She does not sound like a victim of chaos. She sounds like a woman who has accepted the physics of her situation. "I am going to heaven," she tells her mother. "Thank you for everything." Marco calls his father, trying to minimize the horror to spare him pain, even as the toxic gases confuse his mind. "The smoke is too much," he admits. They retreat to the furthest corner of the apartment, holding each other as the room temperature climbs towards fatal levels. The forensic timeline indicates that they lost consciousness due to carbon monoxide poisoning before the flames fully breached the interior. They died because they were architects who trusted the integrity of the building and citizens who trusted the integrity of the command. If they had been cynical, if they had been rebellious, if they had hung up the phone and run the moment they smelled smoke, they would be alive. Instead, they followed the rules until the air ran out. The Grenfell Tower stands today as a charred skeleton, a physical testament to the night when a safety protocol became a death sentence. October 8, 2009. The high desert of Sedona, Arizona, is silent, bathed in the soft light of dusk. But near a rented retreat center, a deadly experiment is reaching its climax. Kirby Brown, a 38-year-old artist and seeker of self-improvement, is sitting in the pitch-black darkness of a makeshift structure. She is participating in the Spiritual Warrior Retreat, a high-end seminar led by self-help guru James Arthur Ray. Kirby has paid nearly $10,000 to be here, driven by a sincere desire to push her limits. But tonight, the boundary between spiritual breakthrough and biological failure is being intentionally blurred. The structure she is sitting in is a sweat lodge, but it is an architectural abomination. It is a low, cramped dome covered in layers of plastic tarps and heavy blankets, designed to trap heat with absolute efficiency. Inside, 55 people are squeezed knee to knee in concentric circles, creating a claustrophobic human pressure cooker. In the center, red-hot volcanic stones are piled in a pit, radiating temperatures that are rapidly turning the air into a thermal weapon. The heat is not the only danger. The psychology of the room is even more lethal. James Arthur Ray, standing by the door as the gatekeeper, has spent days conditioning these students. He has framed physical distress not as a warning sign, but as a test of will. "You will feel like you are dying," he told them earlier. "But you are not. You are shedding your ego." This is the fatal context. He has created a binary reality. To stay is to be strong, to be a warrior, to be polite and respectful of the process. To leave is to fail, to be weak, to interrupt the sacred energy of the group. Kirby Brown is a woman of immense determination. As the temperature inside the lodge climbs past 200 degrees Fahrenheit, her body begins to sound its biological alarms. Her heart rate spikes as it tries to pump blood to her skin to cool down, but the air is too hot and humid for sweat to evaporate. Her core temperature rises. In a normal situation, she would stand up and walk out. But here, leaving requires a massive act of social defiance. It requires her to crawl over the legs of 50 other people, to interrupt the guru's chanting, to let light into the dark room, and to admit defeat in front of the tribe. The social pressure acts as a physical barrier. She does not want to be the one who ruins the ceremony. She does not want to be the problem student. So she stays. She sits in the dark, trusting that the master knows the limits of safety. She is wrong. The master is ignoring the laws of thermodynamics. As the session enters its final rounds, Kirby's condition shifts from heat exhaustion to severe heat stroke. Her thermoregulatory system collapses. Her body stops trying to cool itself, and her core temperature began to climb to a fatal threshold. This is the moment where politeness becomes a collective cause of death. Other participants in the dark can hear people vomiting. They hear heavy, rasping breathing, the sound of a body shutting down. But they do not intervene. They have been told that this is purging, a release of negative energy. To check on a neighbor, to ask, "Are you okay?" would be an intrusion. It would show a lack of faith in the process. So, they sit shoulder to shoulder with dying people, maintaining a respectful silence while their kidneys fail and their brains swell. Kirby begins to lose consciousness. The proteins in her cells start to denature, a process from which there is no recovery. Her brain, encased in the skull, swells due to cerebral edema. She drifts into a coma, not with a scream, but with a quiet slump. Even then, no one stops the ceremony. The social contract of the spiritual warrior demands total submission to the timeline. When the flap is finally opened after 2 hours, light floods the tent. Most participants crawl out into the cool desert air, gasping and disoriented. But Kirby Brown does not move. She is found unconscious, her skin hot to the touch. The purging was not a spiritual release. It was multi-organ system failure. Emergency services arrive to find a scene of chaos. People are hallucinating, screaming, and going into cardiac arrest. Kirby is airlifted to a hospital, but the damage is irreversible. She is pronounced dead from severe hyperthermia and dehydration. She was a smart, capable woman who was killed not by the heat alone, but by a manipulated environment where the fear of being rude to the leader was weaponized against her survival instinct. She paid the ultimate price for being a good student who didn't want to interrupt the class, even as it killed her. December 22nd, 1999. The cockpit of a Korean air cargo Boeing 747 is a sterile, quiet space, illuminated by the glow of hundreds of instruments. The massive freighter is preparing to depart London Stansted Airport, hauling tons of cargo into the winter night. But the most dangerous element on board is not the payload or the weather. It is the invisible, crushing weight of cultural hierarchy. In the captain's seat sits Park Duk-kyu, a 57-year-old veteran and former fighter pilot. He is a man of the old school, a figure of absolute authority who views the flight deck as his personal kingdom. To his right sits First Officer Yoon Ki-sik, a 33-year-old pilot who is competent, intelligent, and deeply conditioned by a social system that equates obedience with virtue. In this specific era of aviation, questioning a senior captain was not just a breach of protocol. It was a profound social taboo, an act of public humiliation. This dynamic is about to be tested by a single, catastrophic mechanical failure. As the jet lifts off into the ink-black sky, a critical instrument on the captain's side, the Attitude Director Indicator, ADI, malfunctions. The ADI is the artificial horizon. It tells a pilot if the wings are level, a vital function when flying at night with no external reference points. Due to a faulty repair, the captain's screen is frozen. It tells him the wings are level, no matter what the plane is actually doing. The first officer's screen, however, is working perfectly. The captain is essentially flying blind, but the first officer can see everything. As the plane climbs, the captain initiates a standard turn to the left. Because his instrument is broken, he does not see the bank angle increasing. He thinks he is flying straight, so he turns the yoke further left, trying to get a response from his frozen screen. In reality, he is rolling the massive 747 onto its side. The first officer, staring at his own healthy instrument, sees exactly what is happening. He sees the horizon line tilting dangerously. He sees the bank angle pass 30 degrees, then 40, then 60. He knows with mathematical certainty that the captain is flying them into the ground. This is the moment where two programming systems are at war inside the first officer's mind. His pilot training, which screams to take control, and his entire life's cultural training, which forbids him from publicly shaming a senior. The psychology of the hierarchy wins. Yoon Ki-sik does not grab the controls. He does not shout. He does not issue a command. Instead, he tries to communicate through the quiet, respectful language of a subordinate. "Bank is not working," he says softly. It is a sentence so passive, so deferential, that the captain, focused on his own struggle, completely ignores it. The captain believes his instrument is right, and his junior officer is simply confused. The plane continues to roll. The bank angle hits 90 degrees. The wings are now perpendicular to the ground. The Boeing 747 is no longer flying. It is falling sideways out of the sky. The flight engineer, sensing the gravity of the situation, yells, "Bank!" from the back seat, but it is too late. The first officer, who had the correct data and the physical ability to save the plane for nearly 60 seconds, remains frozen in his role as the dutiful subordinate. until the very end. He cannot bring himself to humiliate his superior, even as the ground rushes up to meet them. At 1838, less than a minute after takeoff, the aircraft slams into a field at a speed of over 250 knots. The impact is absolute. The kinetic energy disintegrates the cockpit instantly, causing a fatal structural failure of the entire aircraft. The investigation revealed no mechanical reason for the first officer's inaction. The controls worked perfectly on his side. He died because the social cost of interrupting an elder felt higher than the risk of crashing. He was a victim of a corporate culture that valued face over survival. A culture where being polite to the captain was the ultimate standing order, even if that order led directly into the earth. The tragedy of Flight 8509 forced a global revolution in crew resource management, teaching the world that in a cockpit, a polite co-pilot can be the most dangerous instrument of all. May 1880. The air over the Chao Phraya River in Siam, modern-day Thailand, is a wall of humidity, the muddy brown water reflecting the oppressive glare of the tropical sun. A glittering procession of royal barges cuts through the current, a spectacle of carved teak, gold leaf, and the rhythmic splash of synchronized oarsmen. This is a routine journey to the Bangpa Inn Royal Palace, a summer retreat. Aboard one of the smaller, more elegant barges sits 19-year-old Queen Sunanda Kumariratana. She is the first and favorite wife of King Chulalongkorn, and she is pregnant with his heir, the future of the dynasty. Beside her is her 2-year-old daughter. In the eyes of her subjects, the queen is not merely human. She is a Devaraja, a living god, a figure whose physical form is sacred and inviolable. But this status was a cage, built from an ancient and unbreakable law. A commoner was forbidden from touching the queen. The punishment was not a fine or imprisonment. The punishment was immediate death, often for the offender's entire family. This protocol, designed to elevate and protect the royal body, was about to become the instrument of her demise. As the barge navigates a treacherous bend in the river, a powerful, unseen current grabs the hull with the force of a giant hand. The small vessel, top-heavy with its ornate decorations, lists violently. There is a sudden, sharp crack of wood, a collective gasp from the surrounding boats, and in a matter of seconds it capsizes, throwing the queen, her daughter, and their attendants into the swirling, opaque water. The serene procession erupts into a moment of frozen, silent horror. Dozens of guards, boatmen, and servants are within feet of the struggling royals. They are strong men. They are excellent swimmers. They watch as the queen's heavy, elaborate silk garments become instantly waterlogged, acting as a lead anchor, pulling her under. They see her panic. They hear the cries of her child. But no one moves. No one jumps in. This is not cowardice. It is a state of absolute psychological paralysis. Every biological instinct in their bodies is screaming, "Save them." But a lifetime of cultural and religious conditioning is screaming louder. Do not touch. They are trapped in a situation where the act of rescue is the ultimate crime. To reach out and pull the queen from the water would be to sign their own death warrant. And so, they watch. They stand on the decks of their boats and on the riverbank, their faces contorted with a horror they cannot act upon. They are witnesses to a preventable death, held in place by the very etiquette meant to honor the victim. For several agonizing minutes, the queen struggles to stay afloat, her divine status rendered meaningless by the simple physics of buoyancy. Her body, deprived of oxygen, begins to shut down. The involuntary laryngospasm, the body's last defense, fails. The gasping reflex forces her to inhale the river's murky water, filling her lungs. The biological reality of drowning, the aspiration of water, the cerebral hypoxia, the eventual cardiac arrest, plays out in plain sight, a fatal spectacle dictated by protocol. Her daughter succumbs even faster. The crowd remains motionless, their politeness, their reverence, their terror of breaking the rules, transforming them into statues. When the struggle finally ceases and the bodies sink beneath the surface, a horrified silence descends upon the river. The overturned barge, with its intricate gold leaf, bobs gently in the current, an empty, hollow monument to the absurdity of the moment. The news of the Queen's death devastated King Chulalongkorn. In his grief and rage, he hunted down the officials who oversaw the procession and punished them severely. But he knew the true culprit was the tradition itself. He later abolished the ancient law, ensuring no one would ever again have to choose between their own life and that of a royal. But for Queen Sunanda, the change came too late. She was a woman who was surrounded by rescuers but died utterly alone, a victim of a system where being too polite, too obedient, and too respectful was a capital offense. These victims had a single second to decide. Here is your test. You are trapped in the Grenfell Tower fire. The 911 operator tells you to wait. You know they are wrong. Do you hang up the phone on the voice of authority and try to run down the smoky stairs, risking death? Or do you wait respectfully? Be honest. Would you deliberately disobey the government to save your life? Like and subscribe.